Now we're just going to talk a little bit, like really very little bit, about neurotransmitters. And we're only going to focus on norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin, which are three neurotransmitters. So first of all, I mean, you probably already know this from biology. What is a neurotransmitter? It's a biologically synthesized amine. So that means, first of all, you know what it means to be an amine. It's a nitrogen, a molecule that has a nitrogen in it. And it's biologically synthesized, which means that we make it inside of our body. And its job is to send messages throughout our body, and those messages pertain to motion as well as our state of mind, our mood. Neurotransmitters are released from neurons, which are our nerve cells, and they travel through the empty space from one neuron to another. So here is this picture of a neuron, and right here is the empty space in between one neuron and the other. Here's neuron number 2, and the neurotransmitter's job is to move through this empty space from one neuron to the other. Here is even more of a close-up of that last figure. So this is a neuron, this is another neuron, and this is the empty space in between the two of them, and these little teeny tiny green power pellet looking things are the neurotransmitters. So they are the amines that are crossing through this empty space and carrying the message from one neuron to the next. They're being synthesized and held in these little pockets, and then they get released and move across the empty space, and they get absorbed by these little channels or receptors on the next neuron in line. So like I said, the three that we're focusing on, norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin, there are three different neurotransmitters, but they all work together collectively to help control our motion as well as our state of mind. And this awesome diagram that I found on the internet shows us how these three neurotransmitters work independently and together to control all these different functions. So for example, our mood and our cognitive function is controlled by our balances of all three of them, norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine. Our attention is controlled by a combination of just norepinephrine and dopamine. Dopamine by itself controls our reward pathways and our motivation. So this just kind of shows you how they affect all these different things. Norepinephrine, when we have an excessive amount of norepinephrine in our body, either just from some isolated incident, or maybe our body just produces too much of it naturally. If we have an excessive amount, it is associated with mania. If we're experiencing a very stressful time, such as right now, if we're producing a large amount of norepinephrine, our body can convert it to adrenaline, because adrenaline is very useful in the fight or flight response. Dopamine is a really delicate balance necessary for us to function normally. If we have an excessive amount of dopamine, that is associated with schizophrenia. If we don't have enough dopamine, that's associated with Parkinson's disease. If you have just a little bit too much dopamine, that causes a feeling of high, which can be associated with illegal drug use. Cocaine and heroin are both substances that increase dopamine in our body. And then last but not least, serotonin. Lacking serotonin is one of the causes of depression, and that could either be because a person doesn't produce enough serotonin in their body, or because their body is metabolizing serotonin too quickly. And so, like I said, really small, that's all we're going to talk about with regards to these neurotransmitters, but we are going to talk more about this type of stuff in tomorrow's lecture.